Wildfire has always been a major natural disturbance agent, particularly in forested and grassland ecosystems. And so the model is fully capable of simulating that disturbance. There are other natural disturbances like avalanches and floods and even volcanoes and those kinds of things. I'm not going to get into that at this time. I'm just going to show how we've used the model to simulate wildfire across large landscapes. And I'm going to look at two temporal periods. First of all, look at wildfire in the pre-industrial era where there was not widespread fire suppression. And then we'll look at a forecast going forward where fire suppression is quite effective on a landscape and how that will change the amount of wildfire and its size, frequency, juxtaposition on the landscape, etc. So starting out, the analysts using the LC's model have full capability to control disturbance events, whether they're human land use or natural disturbance. So here, this is in the mapper portion of the model, and I'm simulating natural fire. The indicator that I'm changing is fire, so I'm just telling the model those basic things, and then when fire comes, it resets the age of the forest back to 1 from whatever it was, and it reinitiates the condition or the origin of that new stand or grassland as being from fire and not from, say, timber harvesting. And then we can also control the shape and allocation of fires that will be simulated. So just looking in here, we can see a distribution that's being used within the study area. So looking at size classes in square meters and the relative proportion of fires that are going to be in each of those size classes. So we have 4% at this 1 million square meter size, and then 10% at 55 million, 36% higher, and 50%. So these are numbers that have been derived from historical estimates done by fire ecologists in this particular study area. So we've drawn this information from the literature, and you can change the shape of the fires depending on different parameters that the model allows. In this case, a clustered sort of roundish fire shape is being used. And then, so this is pre-contact time, and I've mentioned before that we need to run that for many, many decades in order to find the natural range of variation, to understand, because fire rates and frequency and sizes vary year to year and decade to decade with shifts in climate, but just also natural differences in those fire probabilities based on probably mostly on interannual variation in climate. So you can see here that these fire amounts were calculated based on the probability estimates of historic fire within the ecosystems in this study area. And then the model has been instructed by decade how many square meters of fire to burn in each one of these decades. And the example that I'm showing is we're time stepping by a decade. You could time step by the day if you wanted and had that level of resolution. In this case, though, we're looking at a long period from 1510 up until just before 1900. So what that looks like then is you get ranges of different probable fire frequencies. So I'm looking now at just 10-year segments of potential fires that would have burned in this range of natural variation period, this pre-industrial, pre-fire suppression period. And so the red areas, you can see the study areas in green. The red areas are areas that are being burnt. Don't really pay attention to this 1810s. And it's just a marker, a decadal marker. But as you saw, we were going all the way back into earlier times. So just starting the model here, you can see that fires would have burned in various sizes and frequencies. Because this is a small watershed, we have pretty big variation. You get a big fire event in 1 year, like right there, changes things significantly. So in this particular ecosystem and this stochastic simulation, there were quite a few very large fires that would have had a major influence on that watershed. So this is 1 century. You can go ahead and look at another century where things might have play out a little bit different. You can see still, though, very dramatic because it's a small watershed, but maybe more smaller fires in this particular example typically than any great big large fires. So you can have any number of different scenarios that you want to run, and you can then use that to understand the probable distribution of fire frequency, size, shape, and the resulting condition on the landscape when we're looking back pre-industrial and pre-fire suppression. Now, of course, we are very actively managing wildfire today, and as a result, in this particular example, I'm looking at suppressed wildfire forecast. So fire was simulated in this case at 0.076, which is pulled again from the last 60 years or so of history, of realized forest history in this area. So, well, I guess in this, and the fire size is based on 25 years. So in the last 60 years or so, we've been in this particular study area knocking back fire with active suppression by over 90%. So this is just a place to document in the model. It was Wilson 2015 was the research that pulled, and then the National Forestry Database. So where we got that data, again, we're simulating fire and doing all the same things, but you see in this 50-year forecast a significantly smaller amount of fire happening. And so then you go take a look at that in the same watershed, and you can see that the result is fewer fires spread out more across the watershed and at a very much reduced size and intensity, which is reflective of the fire suppression efforts and the very effective capability of the province in putting out these fires very quickly. In fact, in British Columbia, I think the statistic is something like 89% of all wildfires that start are extinguished within 24 hours of them igniting. Of course, this has significant implications then for the age structure and composition of forests or grassland ecosystems, which then would affect other indicators, say as an example, elk or moose or deer or other ungulates that rely on forest cover and the mix of that with other forest cereal age classes for their habitat.